Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the We Are Careers show. And I hope you're having a great week wherever you are in the career sphere. Sabiha, how's your week going at the moment?
You know what? It's a good start to this week, and I hope everybody else that's joining us right now is also having a good week. And maybe you are looking for some inspiration for your continuous professional development. Well, good thing that you've joined us today. Now, if you are joining us for the very first time, welcome, welcome, welcome. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on whatever platform that you're joining us on, and a reminder of what we are all about for our first time viewers. But also, it's always good to remember our regular loyal viewers as well. Now, the We Are Career Show is your fortnight go-to career program for working professionals within the UK market and beyond now, because we know so many of you are joining us from abroad as well, who want to improve and enhance their continuous professional development. And you do that by joining us at every episode where we will share with you latest issues impacting the career development sector. Now, each show, it's about bringing you the latest sector information as well as bringing you inspirational guests based on topics that matter to you. And today we're probably going to ruffle a few feathers with our current guest today. And the aim is simple, it's to connect and build a strong community of career professionals so that we can serve our clients in the best possible way. Now, for those of you that don't know me, I'm known as Amit Patel, and I help international job hunters stop struggling and start thriving. And as always, I have the fabulous Chris Webb. Chris, what have we got coming up in this episode today?
Yes, thanks, Sabir. And to those who are kind of watching the podcast and thinking, is this actually the ghost of Chris Webb? No, it is really me. A slight technical issue with my camera. I'm looking a little bit faded today, but I assure you, I definitely am here. And as Sabir said, on this week's episode, what we're kind of really doing is coming back to that subject of education. And that's been a bit of a focus in recent episodes of the podcast. But this time, what we're going to be doing is exploring what we can kind of learn from newer models, new approaches to training and education that have maybe emerged in recent years, and what this can perhaps teach us about how education might need to change in response to a rapidly changing world around us. Now, to help us unpick what is absolutely a complex topic, we're delighted to be joined by Amit Patel, Creative Director at Experience Haus, who are a design education services organisation who provide practitioner-taught technical skills training for professionals and organisations covering a range of different digital disciplines. So Amit, a very warm welcome. Thanks so much for joining us today. And I guess for any of our viewers, listeners who've maybe not heard about you before, not come across your work, and tell us a little bit more about you and the work you're doing at Experience Haus.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much for the warm welcome. Excited to be here with you today. As you've mentioned, in my role as the creative director here at Experience Haus, I essentially look after our content design, curriculum design, making sure that we've got kind of the right instructors teaching everything that we do and cover. We offer courses to individuals in terms of the B2C format, so individuals can come and take programs with us either online or in our studio here in London and upskill, refresh, perhaps career pivot into design disciplines. So that could be user research, could be product strategy, could be service design, could be something within AI and design, which is becoming a very hot topic, of course, at the moment. And then we have B2B capability building. So the same modules that we deliver to individuals, we can then remix and package and build bespoke programs for corporate clients who are looking to kind of energize, refresh, upskill teams to take on some of the business challenges that they have as well. So me being in a design and tech background for the last 20 years, education was not something that I had set out to become part of. I had no idea. It's just that I saw a gap. I saw something that I kind of really ended up enjoying in terms of delivering and building courses. And here we are today with a great about 2,500 alumni from our courses and a nice growing list of companies that we're working with around the world.
Thank you so much for that, Amit. And you know what I love about your journey is that in terms of your own professional journey, of how you've also evolved and the career pivot that you have done, and now how you're helping others do the same, and how you've come up with an end-to-end solution as well. Now, This next part of the show is where we do what we call our careers cheers. And if you're listening for the first time, then here's what's going to happen. Okay. Every show, we celebrate innovative and inspiring members of the careers community, or simply it's about giving a shout out to something positive that's happening in the world of careers. So, Amit, let's start with you. Who or what is your careers cheers for the week?
Yeah, so this was very new for me. I hadn't really thought about this until you kind of, you put this question to me as we were kind of preparing for today. And something that I came across is a recent research piece done by a organization called Talking Futures. Now, I haven't heard of them before. It's just something that I had just come across through a few news articles. Then digging deeper into those articles, I wanted to see who did this research. And they ended up this organization spoke to about 2,000 parents who are obviously the parents of young adults, of children who are kind of starting to think about potential careers. And one of the research findings was that it highlighted challenges that parents are having in helping to understand and shape career options for their children and the young adults that they are raising as well. So obviously, as we know, and we just talked about AI, we talked about research, we talked about strategy, we talked about all different types of careers that are within all different types of industries. As a parent, as a carer, how do you acknowledge all of this? How do you become aware of all of the options as well? So I want to shout out particularly this research that was done by Talking Futures, because it's obviously highlighted that there is some need to promote and build awareness of potential career options. To make sure that everyone is aware of them, not only just the teachers or kind of career advisors, but the parents who are helping guide as well. So I want to shout out that piece of research because hopefully it's a
Nice.
mechanism for some change.
Nice, great piece. And by the way, folks, okay, we never know what our guests are going to pick, and they never know what feel good story that we're going to pick. And so, in line with what Amit has picked out as well, my careers cheers. See, I think this was the geek and the nerd in me this week that's sort of kind of getting into reading and research. So I picked from the Journal of Vocational Behavior, a piece of paper that came out recently, which is the Introducing a Sustainable Career Ecosystem: Theoretical Perspectives, Conceptualization, and Future Research Agenda. I know it's a bit of a mouthful. Okay, the paper is by Donald Vander Hegden and Baruch. And essentially, I mean, we'll include the link in the notes of the show today so that you can download the paper and take a read of it yourself. But essentially, they're looking at theoretical framework of sustainable career and career ecosystems into sustainable career ecosystems theory by developing, as you've heard, the latest buzzword, AI, as a new sort of actor, spotlighting the need of relationships between the individual career practitioner and presenting a new complex model. So anybody who's looking to sort of kind of geek out and read some research theory, definitely this paper is going to be one that's going to catch your interest. So that's my careers cheers. You've heard from Amit's careers cheers. Chris, who or what have you picked for your careers cheers this week?
Yeah, thanks, Spear. It's a who, and it's also kind of somewhat connected to what you just talked about. So a lot of people who kind of follow my work on LinkedIn will know that I'm fairly big on AI. I kind of write quite a lot about AI in the career development sphere. But my kind of careers cheers really is to another careers professional who's doing an awful lot of work to kind of basically promote the role of AI in career development and actually kind of push forward the way we think about this technology within our own sector. And that is Danny Mertzer, who some of you might remember from a former episode of the podcast. He's kind of talked about this sort of previously. But Danny and I were actually both at a conference last Friday. This is actually going back to the 18th of October, if you're actually kind of watching the recording back. And at this conference, we had a little bit of a sort of, I suppose, evangelist versus skeptic debate around the use of AI in the career development sector. And, Danny is excellent at kind of positioning these type of arguments and really sort of encouraging careers professionals to see the possibilities of using technology like AI. And again, really trying to answer that question of, well, how might it impact the work we do? And actually, how can I start experimenting with this type of stuff today? So big shout out to Danny. He's doing an awful lot to kind of talk about AI and career development in all sorts of different settings around the world now, globally. You'll kind of find him everywhere. But yeah, huge careers cheers to him for kind of advancing how careers professionals are thinking about this technology in our own space as well.
Excellent. Thanks so much for that. So, Chris, let's dive into today's topic. What are we going to be exploring so that our viewers can walk away from today's episode with some new or maybe re energizing them in the space that we're going to be exploring today, Chris?
Yeah, thanks, Sabiha. So, I mean, we've talked about this kind of obviously at the top of the show that, we do tend to cover quite a lot of education-based topics as part of We Are Careers. And it's partly due to, where careers professionals are working. But one of the things that we've had a lot of really positive feedback about in the past, Amit, is this idea of different approaches to education and training. And so we got a lot of buzz about our episode with London Interdisciplinary School and some of the stuff that they're doing and with their kind of combined honours degrees. But I think it's a really good place for us to kind of start is to talk a little bit more around Experience Haus, about some of the stuff that you mentioned in your intro, and particularly to find out a little bit more about actually what do these kind of programs involve, a little bit more detail around what you're doing with the training programs at Experience Haus, and I guess how they may be different to some of those skills development training qualifications that people may be more familiar with in terms of education programs.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think what's exciting and maybe exciting isn't the word, but I think maybe it's it's a positive thing, is that a lot of the value proposition or pillars that Experience House was set up on 7 years ago still remain in place today. We haven't changed the approach. We've kind of built and iterated slightly on them, but a lot of it still remains the same, which is it also kind of it shows kind of the maturity and the growth that we've kind of been able to kind of see over as well. So just to kind of quickly step back in terms of the training that we deliver, it's all within what we call design or experience design, right? So it's user research, UX, UI, strategy, service design, UI design. It's things that are kind of needed to build the digital products of today, of tomorrow, to understand how to build the services that we're all going from as well, that we're kind of going through. So everything that's needed to design experiences is what we train individuals and companies on. But what has made, and I'm going to particularly focus on the B2C side of things for most of what I'm going to be speaking through, although some of that does cross over into our approach on corporate training. I think essentially there are three core pillars to our approach and kind of what helps us kind of differentiate ourselves versus what else is out there. Number one is our class sizes are kept very small. So we typically have 8 to 15 people max, most likely 8 to 12 people max in a cohort. Because people are coming to take these courses to career pivot, to refresh, or to really solidify their learning, it's very important in this realm of work that people get the opportunity to get that careful critique, that feedback that's so important to make sure that they're doing things the right way. If they're one of 100 people or one of 50 people, they don't get the chance to ask questions. They don't get to ask kind of going into the little details that are going to help separate them and prepare them when they're in their careers in the future. So that's number one, small class sizes. And that has remained the same since day one of our very first courses. Number two is I'm a firm believer of the environment that you're learning in will kind of help inspire and stimulate you as well. So with the vision of Experience House, as we started kind of thinking more about where does this all sit and where is it all hosted, I didn't want it to feel like a classroom. So our studio here in Shoreditch is literally part of a design agency. So we have half the floor as Experience House, as learning. It very much feels like a design agency when you walk in. And the other half is an actual live design agency that we've been in partnership with for about 5 or 6 years now. So this crossover of a learning environment, but also knowing that there are design practitioners literally 30 meters down the hall, and allowing that crossover to create itself and feedback and workshops that the professional designers can give to our students and the feedback that they can give to our students creates this really, really nice kind of feeling of, hey, I'm actually learning what it's like to be in the industry, and that's helping me feel more confident and feel more prepared as well. And then the third one, which is probably the biggest reason I think that students come and study with us, and again, we try and use the same mechanism on our corporate training, is working on real life challenges as much as possible. So we have created partnerships with business schools, incubators, accelerators, individual entrepreneurs, student entrepreneurs, et cetera, who can provide briefs from as real businesses, as real startups, provide real life design challenges for our students to undertake. Now, those startups, small businesses, they don't pay for that privilege. They provide the project knowing that they're going to have students who are in training working on their project for them. The students get the benefit of working on something real rather than hypothetical, going back to my point around getting feedback and being able to understand what it's like to work with a real client. And then, of course, it's a big part of our value proposition. It allows us to expand our network as well. So that real life project is given to students on a part-time course, literally in week 1. So in week 2, they're meeting a client and understanding how to dissect a brief and challenge some of the points that they've made. And at the end of every course, there is an element of storytelling as well. So the student's team, individual or student team, has to present back to that client as well. So it creates this really kind of nice ecosystem of working on real life challenges, understanding what it's going to be like working in the client environment or in a kind of agency environment, and also being able to have the opportunity to make sure I can ask the right questions, get direct feedback, get that right critique that will build my confidence that I'm doing things the right way.
I love that, Amit, of, what I was, as you were sort of describing that, I was thinking to myself, okay, he's created loop systems where you're literally, as you said, these kind of this 3-pillar, what is guiding you in terms of your ethos as a brand, but also then what that individual gets when they come and join one of your programs means that it's not just sort of academic, it's also practical as well. And I love that idea of, of them being based in a real world design sort of kind of studio, just like, doors away, so that they can embrace that. And so that brings me to my next question, Amit. Why do you feel this model of education and training works?
Obviously, there's so many models, and I don't want to stay here and say ours is absolutely the best and the only way that you can do it. I'm always getting inspiration from other places as well, and there's so many different things I want to add into this kind of what we've built. But why I think it works is because, number one, it allows it's very inclusive and it inspires diverse thinking. I think number one is the small class size allows everyone to really get involved in a project, allows everyone to feel that their voice can be heard. Again, it's not one of 50, it's not one of 100, and especially in this discipline where you want to make sure that you're kind of digging deeper at the right times, you're kind of going into the details when you need to, you're really thinking like in a human-centric way, and that requires that feedback and critique to be given to somebody directly from a design practitioner or from an industry expert. So I think that small class size is critical for this kind of thing. And again, we have pivoted this approach and applied it into our corporate training as well. So we'll advise our corporate clients that, hey, well, if you want to have 20 people in the room, fine, we're going to have to add a couple of more practitioners so everyone can get that chance to get feedback and get that valuable kind of questioning given to them as well. And the same thing with the real life challenges. When we work with a corporate team, we're working with a bank later in November on a 5-day innovation boot camp to upskill their innovation team. And we've said to them, like, find some real life challenges that you're working on in the business at the moment, because we'll apply the learning to that. So rather than working on saying, let's redesign Spotify's podcast UI, well, no, let's work on something you're actually going to be working on in the future so you can see how to kind of leave these skills embedded and really understand how you can be able to use them moving forward as well. So I think it's, and I think one of the words I missed out, which you obviously picked up on, was practical and hands-on, and constantly just throwing people into these environments where this is what it's going to be like, 6 months from now when you're working in the field. So let's get you into that as soon as possible. And build that kind of that level of comfort and break down the things that you're not comfortable with and kind of get and rebuild them for you, but in a very kind of immersive way.
I appreciate, Amit, you're not, as you said, saying that this is the only model that people should use for education or the only model that's kind of out there. But I guess one thing that might be kind of quite interesting is just to pick up on that point around the specialisms that you work with. So if there are people maybe watching or listening thinking, okay, this sounds great, but maybe does it only kind of work for the type of maybe digital disciplines that we're talking about, UX, UI, for example? What I guess would be your sort of response to that? Do you see this kind of model as being something that has got more breadth to it? Because I certainly know that with some of the projects you've talked about in the past, it's not simply working with tech firms, as you said, but it's actually much broader in terms of the type of problems that people are looking to solve.
Absolutely, and it can be, we're being approached to work with banks to help them reimagine the way that they work with external clients, for example, or we've worked with a couple of universities that are looking to engage younger people in academic pathways earlier on, and that has nothing to do with potentially technology as well. It's just, again, I think service design is another kind of growing field where a lot of this can be applied to. When you talk about service design, then you can get into what does this look like in transport? What does it look like in education? What does it look like in the hospitals or in any kind of, a lot of other kind of public sector areas as well? So I think you can start to kind of apply this in many other forums. Naturally, in the past, when we look at like universities, for example, yeah, that we think of big lecture halls and big lecture theaters, and like that's kind of what I went through in my own learning. But then I never really felt like I had this opportunity to get that direct feedback, that valuable kind of critique that was going to really kind of spur me on or inspire somebody to kind of go to that next level as well. So to kind of answer your question, Chris, yes, I do think it can work in other disciplines. I think there's some disciplines where that kind of practical hands-on element may not be kind of possible. But I think we should be exploring these kind of boot camp, immersive, kind of shorter formats. I think it will become more and more as an attractive proposition for people to look into.
And then sort of, Amit, I just want to pick up something, and you've sort of alluded to this a little bit. I've got two questions, slightly different. The first one is about the transformation that you're talking about here, that you're seeing. Like, what would you say is the biggest difference that you see in your sort of, I'm going to call them students, but your members that come and do your programs from day one when they start the program and then when they complete the program? What does that transformational journey look like? I'm just thinking from the perspective of careers advisors and career professionals who might be thinking, oh, I might have a client, or I might know someone, or the group of people that I'm working with could benefit from this type of service and educational experience. Just talk us through what that sort of experience would look like for individuals.
I think, yeah, it's a great question, and it makes me think about what if I had to like think about a way of explaining this to somebody who necessarily wasn't familiar with some of the disciplines we teach. A lot of this is what I like to call creative problem solving, right? So you're using the design process and you're learning about methods and tools, and you're building up a toolkit to allow you to go and take a problem that a client or business comes to you with and then creatively come up with solutions to solve that problem. That could be a digital product, it could be a new service, it could be a reimagining a process, it could be building a whole new venture, building a whole new company as a result of it. Whatever it is, you come up with a solution, but you creatively and collaboratively and in a co-creative way, and you open up to many possible solutions before narrowing down. It's about that creative problem solving that has to come to light. And I think when I look at students that go through that journey, it's about showing them this possibility of saying, here's a brief that naturally would scare people, like, how do I even approach this thing? How do I even start? What are my next steps? And then as you walk through this process with them and you start to kind of unlock the methods and tools that they can be using or might be using on next time they go through the same way, another project, etc., and you unlock that for them, that's where things start to open up. And once you kind of start seeing them come up with actual viable solutions, and I think that's why it's so important to be working with real life projects, that's when there's this light bulb moment. They're like, oh, I actually came up with this solution based on this framework or this process that I was taught. And now I could start to apply it to other projects or other kind of creative aspects of my career, which then kind of gives it that inspiration that I actually can do this. I actually can do this as a career as well. So
I love that.
yeah,
I love that, Amit, that you're saying basically what for me, what I take from that is confidence and competence. You're
yeah,
essentially instilling both in folks that come on this journey with you at Experience House so that they can develop themselves and actually be valuable employees.
yeah,
Or even if these folks decide not to work for anybody, but go open up their own sort of kind of design studio,
yeah.
they've got practical knowledge, know-how of how to do that. I just want to sort of kind of, because I work in the space of international sort of kind of professionals, where do you see this being value add for those folks who are working in sort of kind of in an international space? And do you see yourself replicating this beyond the UK?
Oh, definitely. I think what's fascinating about a lot of the stuff that we're teaching is it's applicable to any industry, any sector, many types of roles. I mean, like I said, you need to kind of be a creative problem solver if you're working within hospitals or if you're working within public sector of any kind of. And we've done training for the Ministry of Defense, for example. We've done training with the NHS. We've done training for tech giants like Spotify. And it doesn't even need to be technology driven, right? So when you start to look at kind of scaling this outside of out of London, outside of this country, all of these kind of growing cities and growing countries, a lot of them are service-based economies. So if they're service-based economies, there's going to be challenges and processes that need to be redone or rebuilt or started from scratch. So you start to see this massive international use for all of this as well. And of course, there are many other kind of training providers that are looking at this kind of stuff globally as well. But for me, I think it's definitely something that needs to be kind of almost like I firmly believe it should be a skill set that's developed at like 16 or 17 years old. And then it's embedded into people at that age. And it's only going to help them think a bit more kind of creatively and in a more problem solving approach, regardless of what kind of career they go into. We've had people that are lawyers, medical doctors, paramedics, police officers, for example, come and take courses with us. And a lot of times it's because they're like, actually, maybe I've reached a limit of what I can do with this career, or is there a different avenue of what I can do with this career? Like junior medical doctors saying wanting to go into health tech, for example, right? So they're leveraging what they've done, they're learning a new skill set, and now they can start to go and creatively create solutions in the health tech world, which is amazing. To be able to kind of unlock that possibility in a 10 or 12 week course as well. So I am very much looking at how we can expand this into more kind of an international reach through kind of a few partner companies. We're already being asked to kind of deliver training to other companies in the world. Most of it's within the UK, but we do have a number of international students that come and take courses with us as well.
I think it's a really important point around that kind of systems thinking, as you were saying, in terms of kind of the broad applicability, because, as you said, it's very easy maybe for people to kind of get hung up on the idea of it's tech related or it's digital, rather than this idea that actually we're talking about creative problem solving, innovation, applicable to almost any industry. And certainly if you look at a lot of the reports that come back from numerous organizations, whether it's LinkedIn, whether it's World Economic Forum, Institute of Student Employers, a lot of the time you are seeing that kind of innovation, creative problem solving very near the top of those lists, almost without fail. And as you said, all of that, regardless of where you're going to be based, regardless of what type of career you might be initially pursuing, what you might want to pivot to, that is going to be foundational, isn't it, in your ability to be able to solve problems for whatever type of organization or organizations that you might be working with. So I think that reframe is really, really important. And as you said, just kind of, I guess, shows the breadth with which people might be employing these type of skills, or the reasons that they might want to get involved with that type of training model, or indeed kind of with what you're sort of offering over at Experience Haus at the moment. So I think this brings us really nicely towards the end of the show. We always kind of run out of time for more of these type of conversations, but if we've got, I guess, Amit, viewers, listeners listening to the podcast today, they like the sound of what they're hearing, but maybe want to find out a little bit more, both in terms of maybe they've got clients who might want to engage with Experience Haus courses, or they just want to find out a little bit more about the model that you've kind of adopted and what that looks like. Where's the best place for them to go to find out more about all of this?
Yeah, and of course, like I said, I'm a strong believer in partnerships and collaboration. That's what's kind of led Experience Haus to kind of what it is now, and we're constantly. You have to explain if you adopt a creative problem solving or design process approach, you kind of know that you have to go very wide with your kind of research and discovery, and I do the same thing. I'm very open to having conversations with people and just helping kind of explore where there could be something to collaborate on, or it might be, hey, actually it may not be us, it might be somebody else I need to introduce you to as well. So of course they can check out our website, www.experiencehaus.com. You can follow us on LinkedIn. You can follow me on LinkedIn as well. And I think those are probably the best ways to kind of find out more about us. We have plenty of information that You can read about kind of case studies of our capability building offer. You can read all about our courses. We do have an AI and design summit coming up on November 8th. We have just under around 30 tickets left. It's a nonprofit event. So we kind of just try and cover our costs through selling the tickets. But it's about 100 people who are very like-minded, who want to talk about AI and design. We've got 11 speakers on the day with panels, workshops, fireside chats, talks, all exploring kind of design, innovation, and AI. So if anyone's in London on November 8th, check that out. All the details are on our website as well.
Oh, Amit, thank you so much for that. And there you go, folks. He's given us a ton of information about encouraging us as career professionals to think outside the box, but also as well when we're working with our clients, what are some of the alternative ways and recommendations that we can make to the clients that we are working with so that they can explore different ways of mapping out careers. And perhaps maybe we're working with folks who are stuck in their careers, thinking about a career pivot, and this could be an alternative option that your clients could explore. So please do check out Amit's website and resources, as well as, thank you so much for joining us. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for more shows coming up. And speaking of our next show, Chris, what do we have coming up next? What can folks look forward to?
Yeah, so we've got a really interesting one coming up again, kind of connecting in everything, sort of starting to kind of dovetail quite nicely at this time of the year, which is great. So in our next episode, we're actually going to be speaking to Keris Evans from Into Film, all about Discover Creative Careers Week. So a little bit of a connection back to some of the stuff that Amit's been talking about today in terms of creative problem solving, the design, digital economy, all of those kind of things, and why I suppose the way we talk about the creative sector needs to change. That's certainly what the kind of focus of Discover Creative Careers Week is. But that's all kind of coming up in our next episode. If you've enjoyed today, as we've said, do kind of check out on the YouTube description all of the resources that we've been talking about. Do check out in the Spotify episode notes everything that's been mentioned, including any of the items that Sabiha and Amit have talked about in the Careers Cheers segment, and of course all of the details about how to find out more around Experience Haus and to get in contact with themselves and Amit if you're interested in continuing this conversation after listening to the podcast. But that brings us very nicely to the end of the episode. All that's left to be said is a massive thank you to Amit again for joining us today on the podcast. Big thanks to all of you watching and listening at home, and we will see you in the career sphere in a fortnight's time. Take care.